Everyone's ready? Okay. I'll call this meeting to order of the Atchison City Commission, Monday, August 21st, 2023 at 4:30 p.m. We will start with an invocation from Pastor Ken Watkins.
Close your eyes, please. Lord, I just ask you as our great shepherd, the one that has led all these years that I've lived in this town and for many before, that you'll continue to help us to walk in the right paths, to do the right things, to not fear those dark days that might be in our future. And Lord God, even if we go through them now, let us always know that your rod and your staff will comfort us. And that, Lord, those that are against the things that help us to progress forward as a community, you will help us to sit at the head table, and all those naysayers can be silenced by you. I pray, God, that you help this community be able to always understand the goodness and the mercy of God, and that, Lord, that we can always be in your presence all the days of our lives. Thank you, Lord. In your name, amen.
Thank you. You want to join me in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any proclamations this evening. So, Tina, do you want to do roll call?
Yes. Mayor Moody,
Present.
Vice Mayor Bartlett,
Present.
Commissioner Young, Commissioner Greenlee,
Present.
Commissioner Wilcox.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, we will open up our public forum. Anyone who'd like to address the City Commission regarding items that are not on the agenda may do so at this time. Okay. Hearing none, we will close the public forum and move on to the consent agenda.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. On today's consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the August 7th, 2023 City Commission meeting, authorization for staff to execute the revised application for FAA Grant 019-021 funding, and authorize the mayor to sign the CDBG Commercial Rehab Grant 21-CR-004 contract extension request.
Any questions? No? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Item number 1, presented by Justin Prejean, is the public hearing Reinvestment Housing Incentive District for Vision 4 first.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just give a brief introduction and then we can conduct the public hearing. Any action on this would be a subsequent item. So we're just following the prescribed process required to enact what's called now a Reinvestment Housing Incentive District, RHID. This is for a collection of property that I'll say is situated between the campus of Benedictine and the riverfront downtown, mostly along what would have been originally platted in Atchison as the First Street corridor, although not entirely. Those documents are included in your packet. This isn't something new. We've been discussing this with the governing body and our Economic Development Advisor Group at this point for 7 or 8 months. We do have a previously adopted development agreement with the developer for the delivery of a certain product, housing product as a part of this and infrastructure that's also tied into this. So today we need to conduct the public hearing, and then when the public hearing is finished, consider Ordinance 6695, which would establish the Reinvestment Housing Incentive District, and further documentation is included. That I'll sit down, public hearing, and I'll come.
Thanks, Justin. At this time, we will open up the public hearing. Anybody who would like to come forward? Okay, please state your name and your address.
Marion Amrine, Mound Street. I attended the Planning Commission meeting earlier this month and wanted to ask questions regarding the development, and at that time I was told it was for informational only and to come today and ask those questions. And so I don't know, and I submitted comments earlier today, so I wanted to make sure they were part of the record. And whether this is the right forum or not, I did want to state that I think the comments that I made do apply to the city's strategic plan focus areas, which included quality of life, housing, and neighborhoods. Because of the public safety concerns for pedestrians and drivers in that area, and quality of life for all the neighbors, especially if a lot more traffic is in that area and we're trying to drive through and we all have to get on Second Street to get out. And it's already tough many times during the day, especially when school is in session. And so I think that's a concern that we all should consider, and especially also the concerns for those living in the neighborhoods and communities with unchecked vermin and animals. If they are not addressed, it just becomes it brings down the quality of life for everyone else in the neighborhood when all of those animals just come into our yards that we're already battling now. And so I guess since my comments are part of the record, is this the right forum to address them, or is there another time?
I mean, you can,
I would say, yes, if the comments are related to the development of the district, I think now would be the most appropriate.
okay.
And so my comments related, again, to safety, road safety, that the district, I was told, they're not planning on widening at least Riley Street. They're going to do some work on Laramie Street, but that street is not, it's hardly suitable for cars to go have two-way traffic now. And if we're going to bring new houses in and bring in a number of more people, the street needs to be up to standards. It is what I'm asking. It's already hard enough to get to the top of Second Street on Riley and Laramie in order to turn out when you can't see. It's a steep street. Both of them are steep, and it's hard to get out. The streets on Second Street, a lot of those corners are not marked with the yellow safety, and so cars are parking very close to the road, and cars are trying to turn down when you're trying to turn out, and it's oftentimes that one of us is backing up. I ask that you consider turning all of those streets in that area into four-way stops on Washington, on Riley, on Laramie, and on Second Street so that we can get out. There's a lack of sidewalks on Riley, Washington, and Laramie. A year and a half ago, a little girl was walking back and forth from her, home from school on Riley Street, walking down the middle of the street because there are no sidewalks anywhere. There's no or the sidewalks don't go through. Some have been taken out, and some just don't go through the top of the street. So she's walking home in the middle of the street. If students are parking on that street, on Riley and on Washington, they are just walking up in the middle of the street, and we're dodging to go around them. Some are wearing earbuds and don't hear us coming behind them. But again, it's tough going up Riley Street and trying to turn north because you can't see until you are getting ready to turn and somebody's getting ready to turn into you. My other major concerns are water, the standing water. There's standing water on Riley Street at the low point, and water runs off into both adjacent properties. There's standing water on Mound Street. As of early, a week and a half ago, there was water going across the road and across the sidewalks. And that happens in the wintertime too. Water collects at the low points between lots 1 through 4 in block 81 and lot 7 in block 106, which is along the old First Street. It didn't happen this past year, but in years past when we weren't in a drought, water is standing for several days at a time, especially in the spring, which just caused additional problems for the vermin and for those in the area. There's also, if there is going to be development in that area, water rushes down the alley in block in block 106, and that feeds into that same old, what's called Old First Street. And water runs down First Street into all of that property on the low areas. It goes in through all the lots because there are no curbs. Animal mitigation, over the years, there's a lot of groundhogs in there. There are deer frequently in the area. And if I ask that the developer do a mitigation plan to relocate them so they don't come into our yards, at least the groundhogs. The deer are going to do what they want to do. That the old First Street is a pretty common thoroughfare for college students, with the college coming up late at night, early in the morning, runners all along in there. And so there's lots of traffic on that, in that area now. And my last comment, or two things. I asked that maintenance of the property. It's great that if the district is approved and there's development in there, because it's an eyesore now. The weeds are taller than me. And so it's hard to, to pass through that area because of all of the weeds. And because I own property in Block 105, lots 13 and 14, if there is going to be curbs, I'd like to be contacted so I can address that I'd like cutouts for curbs.
Thank you.
Alice.
Question?
Marion, excuse me. I get you guys mixed up still, sorry. Has this information, your letter's been provided to these gentlemen?
Didn't provide it to anybody. Today, I provided it to the city.
Yeah, that just came to the office today, provided to each of you.
I mean, I've read it, and as I did your first information and your questions, I've driven the area 4 times, including this afternoon after rereading it. I have to admit I'm confused by some of it.
Sure.
I'm not a builder, but I would think it would be good for them to know what your concerns are. But a significant number of people resist change. Okay, change means something's going to be different. That's the definition of change. It will be different. So it's going to be different, and I think what you're looking for is it's going to be different, but it needs to be good. It needs to be good change.
And I'm no objection to change. I said it's an eyesore. It's been an eyesore for years because it's the unchecked growth, wildlife, animals get dumped down there. So that's great. But again, if we're going to do it, I ask that you do it to city standards so that the road is better, because it's not.
I mean, I agree completely that Second Street is already a problem. And with introducing even more cars, both from Benedictine College and the housing, it's going to make the situation more difficult. But I think that the end result is more important with the additional housing, which Atchison needs. And we just all have to work with Second Street. I mean, I spent 50 years driving them down Second Street 4 or 5 times a day, going to work at the college, living on the other side of town. So I think we'll just have to see how it unfolds, and I'm going to trust that these guys are going to make it up to the standards that we all expect. Because I'm going to trust that they want to put their name on something that, although everybody might not want it, might not agree with it, it's going to be of quality. And if they're not, then I would hope the city would come back to them and say, hey, this needs to be better, just like we would practically anyone else.
I agree, all of those things, except I don't know that Riley and Laramie Streets are part of that plan. At least when I read the information previously, it wasn't talking about widening them all the way. And I just think it's hard for me and another car traveling along that road now. One of us has to stop when the other is passing. And if you're going to have that many cars, it's just going to be a lot more congestion.
And I don't know if turning off those streets is going to get any better no matter what you do, because of the slope of the street is the issue.
And that's why I say a 4-way stop is probably
So, I
needed.
mean, who would answer the question about the streets? Who's,
Well, First thing we could do is ask that try to address specifically the question about Riley and Laramie and their width. There are in the city's ordinances some discussion of types of streets and what their I can't say pre-existing new subdivision is a standard. And a lot of times on some of the narrower streets that exist in the today, we solve those things with parking ordinances to either allow or prohibit parking on one side or the other. In this application, like, sure, those are both incredibly narrow. Curbs along them, improve them, homes there. Will say that intends to build First Street corridor, homes with rear garage, with alleys. I don't think that's Third Street. However, there are sort of random to some extent, but to some extent that can be solved with no parking. And there may be no parking now.
It's one on each side.
One-sided right now.
One-sided on both streets.
Yeah. 'Cause she's 100% right. Like, it's not, certainly not going very fast without putting your.
On Riley Street. On Laramie, when I was coming down here, car stopped so I could travel by. I mean, just because it's two big cars. If you drive big trucks and Suburbans, it's wide.
Whose responsibility are the streets and the curbs, the city or the developer? Do we know, is that defined yet?
Their build out is of the First Street corridor. We have agreed. Surface. Height wise. At this point, we still don't know what the elevation of First Street is going to be. Topographical. A lot of dirt to move around. Walls. Some of that is a little bit iterative. And what I mean by that is I think it's fair to say that my conversation did not contemplate widening fair critique. If the city at some point wanted to widen those, could, but I don't, my take would be that that's not part of what.
Well, you could if the lots aren't already built out to, that makes it, doesn't give you the space to be able to do that.
Yeah, sure, and in the scope of that development agreement, said X, but you. I know that's not a perfect answer.
Yeah. Any comments, guys? I'm all for throwing it on the table.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. I'd just like to say, we're sure going to try and be good neighbors. We're fortunate enough to do this project. And Commissioner, your comment about us, kind of wanting to have our, a name associated with this, that is something important to us. We are pretty excited right now. Kind of, I might deviate just a bit. We've got, several rental properties here in town that we started working on a couple of years ago, and as of now, they're all rented. So we're really grateful for that and excited, and feel that this project is going to fulfill the housing need that you've talked about, as well as when people move into this new home here, that's going to open up a home somewhere else in town for someone to move into. As far as the traffic, we're certainly wanting to work with the city to, find ways to manage that, as best as we can. As far as the, the width of the streets, again, we're still in the early stages. We'll, be wanting to collaborate with city staff on that. And I'd be happy to answer, any questions other than that you might have. I guess one other thing I will add is you bring up some good comments about drainage, and we're certainly concerned about that. David was a civil engineer with Black & Veatch for many, many years, so he says it's going to work fine. He's got a plan. I trust him and believe him. So I know there's issues there now, and hopefully when we're done with it being engineered properly, it'll be better for everybody. That's our hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to come forward?
Darla. I live over on Santa Fe, a transplant from Seattle. Just a couple things. I just briefly looked over this. Obviously, I don't know what's in your packet, but a couple concerns that I just saw is that you have a deferred tax rebate program for the builders, and I'm wondering what that is. My house, I've had it, I want to say 2.5 years, and my taxes have gone up quite a bit, actually. It was kind of surprising in the short time I've been here. So are you raising our property taxes to get this built? Secondly, Atchison is the most quaintest, beautiful, charming city I've had the privilege of spending my time and money in. And in regards to this build, my question would be, is the character of the build? It's 45 lots, is that correct? Single family residency. So with your housing base here, about 51% is quite old or charming Victorian homes. And what will this do to be part of that vision is my question. Is it going to change the character of the city? The short time I've been here, you definitely need housing. I mean, 100%. But there is a way to do it, right? Balance is good. I think this is a different topic, but since I have it done, I'll bring it up. As an outsider, this is just from my tree line view. You have some property owners here that are significantly challenging for, I'll say our city, because I'm part of it. And I don't see that really being addressed, and I could be 1,000% wrong, but it's really challenging to people that want to come here, spend our time here and our money here, when there are property owners that own multiple lots that are in complete, utter degradation. So that's my comments. I'm Darla. I would love to meet each and every one of you as I get to know the city and your infrastructure a little bit better, and offer my 2 cents from coming from a larger city. Thanks so much.
I think there are other people who would have the same tax question, so can we answer that here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with a disclosure. I previously owned the house that Darla now owns privately, so I do want to disclose that before I offer an explanation. I feel like that's important. So the property tax is a calculation of several different factors. The first is the mill levy of all three, others too, but mostly city, county, and school district mill levy. And then the major factor that goes into it beyond that is what the county appraisal is. And so you may have seen in the news in Kansas City, Missouri, there are like 6,000 people protesting their property taxes in Johnson County. Like, it's a laundry list, and it's because the county appraiser gets a lot of the flack and local governments get a lot of the flack, but there is a Kansas statutory requirement for the county appraiser to be within 10% of the actual, what they call like competitive or on-market sales. And so our county appraiser is at like 90.1%, meaning barely compliant. They don't like getting complaints, but when there are market transactions for sales of comparable property, that impacts the valuation and that impacts property taxes. Local governments certainly have the ability to lower mill levy. although local governments have problems at the moment, keeping up with competitive salaries, all of those things, all of those pressures. Anyway, to try and whittle down to the end, when a property sells, it gets reassessed because it's, especially if it's an on-market transaction, so sometimes buyers are surprised when they buy a property and then the property tax that they wind up paying is not what it used to be, because that's a market transaction, and so it gets looked at critically because it was an on-market sale. I would say my house too, that I live in, over the last couple of years is up probably a total of 30% in valuation. And I think if you went around the room and kind of said, how much is yours up? How much is yours up? How much is yours up? Everybody's head would nod and say like, yeah, okay, over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think that that's consistent across the country because inflation is real over this last 3 or 4 year period. It might not be a fully complete answer, but it's
Justin, can you talk about how the
Property
taxes
tax
happen
abatement.
with that district?
Yeah. So, property tax abatement, in what we'll call the target area, and really throughout the entirety of Atchison County, if you meet the criteria, you can participate in something called neighborhood revitalization. Neighborhood revitalization is a program to try and, we understand that if you think about property tax revenue as a farmer thinks about yield, local governments need a certain amount of revenue to operate their services. The trouble is that if you don't have tax-based growth, clearly operating expenses for local governments go up over time, and so you need that valuation to grow, and so you need construction and new property value to do so. In places like Atchison, where it costs a lot more to, the reason you don't see more housing investment, the reason you don't see big new buildings and high-rises here is because the math doesn't work. People don't perceive that to be something that's going to work for them, so that's why we see 10 houses a year built in Atchison. We tear down 15 of them, and that's a negative trajectory, but the way we try to combat that and to ultimately grow the tax base is to offer incentives to developers to build things. And it doesn't have to be a developer, it could be somebody adding a room on their house. It doesn't have to be some big project. Anyway, in Atchison, there is a buy right program, meaning anybody who's building a single house, heck, you could apply for the rebate if you're putting a deck on your house or adding an additional bedroom. And those rebates, depending on the some of the different qualifications, can be as long as 15 years of kind of a stair-step property tax abatement. This project uses a different approach, but it grabs that same future revenue stream of property tax growth. And so in one sense of looking at it, yes, the local governments have agreed that they're giving up that revenue stream in exchange for a developer or someone building this project that adds to the tax base. However, the theory behind it is that without that incentive, the project doesn't happen and that revenue stream doesn't come to pass to give away to begin with. So the rebate is there to try and change the math of real estate development to make more real estate development happen because our tax base needs to grow over time. So that's the theory behind it. It may not be a perfect answer or even a satisfactory explanation, but that's what I got.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you 2 questions, and I'm gonna hold you to a yes or no answer. Okay? If they build these homes, are our taxes gonna go up because of the new homes?
No.
In the long run, if they build these homes, will the tax revenue in the city go up?
Yes.
So,
But won't our property taxes in general go up because all rising taxes? But if you're building this lovely project, for the article. 5 years, investments. So all those surrounding are going to be assessed at.
well, they're gonna go up anyway, let me warn you.
I mean, every year, yes, but. The house right next door to this. 75. House.
So my perspective on that would be that the real estate housing prices in Atchison were flat for maybe 1%, 1.2% for 10 years, for 15 years. And then with the onslaught of COVID and inflation and all those things, all of a sudden it was like pop, 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 pop. And in a course of 5 years, some houses doubled in valuation. And now, even with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, I don't know that I don't know that the prices have come back down. I think there was a lot of bottled up appreciation. So in some ways you call it inflation. In other ways it's appreciation. Yeah, I don't know. If we could predict the prices of those, we'd all be speculating on. I don't know.
Yes, it's my understanding too, they're still gonna pay taxes on the vacant property. They're not excused for that, it's what they're gonna build on top of it.
When the RHID gets established, it effectively freezes the valuation of the district for the lifetime of the benefit.
Marla, they're still paying taxes on the existing. By building these houses, I haven't seen it yet, but by building these houses, that will eventually, and right, as houses have value because they have gone up. But part of the years at least, 2009 until about a year ago, we weren't building, like Justin said, now building. So, and that's nationwide, Kansas. But it hit us really hard. We didn't build a lot to begin with. So
Yeah.
we've got a real.
I will say there are like plausible and defensible arguments against tax abatements and incentives and that entire strategy. You can read a lot of them in the Kansas City Star, who puts out articles all the time about how horrible the development incentives that they offer in Kansas City are. The difference between Atchison and Kansas City is that I think it would stand to reason that in Kansas City you can feasibly build a project without tax abatements. And so the theory there is that they may be giving too much away to make those things happen. In Atchison, it's very rare to see projects of this size and scale come to pass. And so the other thing I would say is that this incentive is no better, maybe slightly better because of the scale of it takes and because of the infrastructure build out that's associated with it. But if somebody went and bought a vacant lot in the grid and built a house on it, that was a $200,000 house, they would get a 10-year 95% tax abatement and then 80, 70, 60, 40, 20 on years 11 through 15. So it's substantially the same offering. The unique difference with RHID is that they're receiving that benefit in return for building the infrastructure, but you also can't double dip. So if they build the houses, they don't get the tax abatement on the houses because they use the tax abatement on the infrastructure reimbursement via this program. So it's not a double dip thing. It's just preempting that program. Neighborhood revitalization can't be used in this area once the RHID gets established. Maybe that's too much in the weeds, but sorry.
Appreciate it.
I can't help but comment on your other question about style of houses they're building. I agree that we have some great homes in this town, but you can't build an old house. You know, you could build a house that looks like an old house, but you can't build an old house. The old houses we have, hopefully people will take care of them and we won't have to tear them down.
If I remember correctly, you guys are doing just a certain amount of styles. There's a handful of them. You want to comment to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Moody. Yeah, I'd like to address that directly. It is extremely important to us that we respect the architectural look and feel of Atchison, Kansas. We are on our 5th home here that we have purchased, visioned, and remodeled. And I would consider it criminal, with my hand on my heart, if we didn't have some architectural control new housing stock that I wanted to go. Insofar as the cost of the price of the new houses, in this market, it is extremely difficult at the price of $175 to $200 a square foot to build housing, quality housing, for much less than the figures. Just wanted to go on record as saying that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do feel obligated to mention that I'm not sure what the source of that 225 number was. I know it might have been in the Globe, and I'm not offering a criticism of the author of that article or anything, but I don't think it's possible to build a new home at that price point. I think Louise would would back. It's just too. That's on construction. Yeah.
That's your lot.
Yeah. I didn't want them to be, they build a home or something and it's listed at whatever number. I didn't want somebody to say, no, you guys said they were going to be 225. I don't believe that they ever provided any information that the price point of the homes would be 225. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. So I don't know the source of that. If I put out something that was confusing or in an action report or something, but that's certainly not my expectation of them.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? Okay, please state your name and address for the commission.
I'm Wayne Scott. I live up on East Kearney Street. And it's my understanding that between First Street and Washington Street, they're going to want to be developing some projects that we haven't been notified about yet. But I am strongly opposed to this. For one reason, it's there's a lot of habitat back there in that area, and it's going to destroy a whole lot of habitat. The other issue is, it's my understanding, and this is just rumor, that the city is going to be willing to take tax money of ours and put in the utilities for these people that are wanting to, and I could be wrong.
Justin just addressed the tax issue on
Okay.
that subject on that. Yeah.
But I'm just really opposed to that. I moved into my house thinking that I had a nice secluded area, and then people want to come in and start building all these little houses. And I just don't think that I should be imposed upon like that. And my neighbors feel the same way. So, I don't know how to address it right now. I should have been notified as far as these plans were coming around. I wasn't. And my neighbors were not either. So that's basically all I have to say about it. I want my privacy. And they go building them houses, and that's going to disturb my peace. That's all I got.
We understand your concerns. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the commission? No? Okay, we will close the public forum and move on to item number 2, which is adopt ordinance number 6695, establishing the RHID for Vision 4 First.
All right, so I'll just briefly note that this would be the ordinance that establishes the reinvestment housing district. Next steps from here would be that there is and Dominic with Gilmore and Bell, who manages all the legal paperwork and everything for us, would have been here in person, although he didn't have a baby, but his wife had a baby last week. So we're giving him a pass on being here in person. This is not the end of the process. The calendar that's included in the packet can show you the other dates, protest petition dates, all of those things are included in the packet. But for this project to take the next step, it does have to be approved. I would just mention, at the moment, everything that's inside this RHID is zoned single-family residential. This area has been platted. What I mean by platted is like this is ground that's been owned and has been part of the city of Atchison for 150 plus years. So there's not any reason before or after the RHID that someone couldn't have purchased one of these lots and put something on it, or all of them and put something on it. The consideration today is whether the RHID is an appropriate incentive tool to use to assist in the development. If the developer is seeking some sort of zoning change, would be what triggers neighbor notifications of things. So I can certainly answer any questions you might have about the the ordinance and
Do we have any questions? Do you have any? No? Do you have any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 6695, establishing the Reinvestment Housing Incentive District for Vision 4 First LLC?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
It's a roll call, sorry.
Oh,
I
okay.
forgot to put
Let's
that
do
on
a
there.
roll call vote. Sorry.
Mayor Moody,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bartlett,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenlee,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilcox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next one, a roll call. No. Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. We'll move on to item number 3, which is the September Hills Estate Plat 1 subdivision presented by Phil Burke.
Well, the good news is this has nothing to do with the HID, so I'll try to make it as brief as possible. With our comprehensive plan and our zoning regulations, anything developed within 3 miles city limits of Atchison comes underneath our subdivision limits. We've had a preliminary plat submitted and a final plat, both approved for a minor subdivision called September Hill Estates Plat 1. It's a single lot broken off of a 70-acre agricultural parcel. There's access to it by a separate deed instrument that will be part of the package for the new owner. That's basically the lot size. It's equatable to what we require. So have a sanitation system. Utilities are available on 262nd Road. Not a whole lot to it. The chairman and vice chairman have both signed the plat, so it's ready to be. I'll take any questions you have. Louise is here also. She's the, call her instigator, but she's the developer behind this whole thing. So she could fill you in further on the details as who's getting what.
How many homes are projected to go in there?
I think one. One?
I lost too many dollars on the first subdivision. I don't.
Any other questions? No? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the September Hill Estates Plat 1 subdivision plat as presented upon collecting all required signatures? Do I have a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. At this time, I need a motion to recess into executive session for consultation with the city attorney to discuss privileged attorney-client matters such as litigation for claims against the city pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2. Ask all the commissioners, Amy Finch and Bob Campbell be in there. And we need 10 minutes to resume at 5:23.
You said 5:23?
So 5:23.
Oh, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All of those hearing none.
What did you say, Zach?
5:23.
5:23?